You're listening to the University of Sioux Falls Campus Ministries podcast.
Hi everyone, my name's Matt Stiles and I serve as the campus pastor at the University of Sioux Falls. On this podcast, we have conversations with USF staff, alumni, students, and experts in the community to help us better integrate the Christian faith into our particular field. The topic that we're focusing on this semester is created for community. Our guest today is Devin Wolthuizen. Devin graduated from the University of Sioux Falls with his bachelor's degree in 2022 and with his master's degree in 2024. In addition to being an alum, Devin has also served as the resident director of Collier Baker, Kroski, and Burgess, what we call CBKB. He has also served as RD of Sullivan Hall and most recently became the assistant director of student life. In these various roles, Devin has worked closely with students and staff to help build community, plan events, and foster relationships on campus. And so with that, Devin, we thank you for being a part of the podcast this morning.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
As we look at the topic of community, I'd like to just start out with your experience as a student. When you came to USF, how did your experience help you understand the importance of community and what that looks like?
Yeah, so coming into USF, I didn't really know what to expect, obviously, as nobody really does when they start out college. Right. I came from a small town, so the small college felt comfortable. The class sizes were comfortable. However, I didn't really know how to get involved. I was in the theater department, which was kind of an immediate plug-in, which I appreciated. But I didn't really feel like I wanted to get out of my comfort zone, so I spent a lot of time with my roommate, just kind of hanging out in our residence hall. We lived in Kroski. We spent a lot of time in the lounge with a group of guys that lived on our floor, watching whatever sport was on TV, or just hanging out in our room. We each had our gaming console set up, and so we'd be playing Madden or whatever else we wanted to play at the time. And so for that whole first semester, I didn't really branch out much. I stayed to myself. I went to rehearsals. I hung out with a small group of friends, and I went to maybe a very select few campus events. And I didn't really understand, I guess, the importance of community. And I found myself feeling disconnected to the point that I was like, what am I doing here? And I was talking to a lot of people and saying that I wanted to transfer. I wanted to go elsewhere. I've talked to several people about it, saying that that first semester, the theater department looked a little bit different. We were trying some new things. The first year students put on our own production, and so we wrote our own show. We didn't really interact much with the upperclassmen, and it wasn't what I anticipated it was going to be, which was like learning from the upperclassmen. Mm-hmm. And so it was an entirely different community than I expected, and I was like, I think I need out of here. Mm-hmm. And by the grace of God, that didn't happen. I didn't transfer, and starting that next semester, I was cast in the main stage production, the musical that was happening, along with a bunch of returning students, a bunch of upperclassmen who kind of put their arms around me and showed me the ropes of what it looked like to be engaged on campus and in a community on campus. And along with that, was encouraged by my RA at the time and my RD to get involved with student leadership. And so I applied to be an RA for the following year and went through that hiring process. And so during that whole spring semester, I was kind of just navigating like a complete 180 turn from feeling completely disconnected to like, holy cow, I've been plugged in and almost like this electrical surge running through of now I'm connected in every way that I could be in this first year. So I was connected, and I got hired as an RA, and I had a great experience in that second semester, and from there on, my experience of community in my time as a student completely changed. I became a leader, and from then on, it became natural to be a part of a community. It was just a blessing. The friends that I made at USF are some of the best people I've ever met in my life. They've walked alongside me in some really hard times and also in some really, really happy times. I met my wife. We have a beautiful daughter, and none of that would have happened if I hadn't been connected and if I wouldn't have experienced the things that I did in my time as a student.
It is interesting in hearing your story how you didn't just fall into connecting right away. And I think sometimes when we think about community, a lot of times the expectation is if I'm going to find a community that's worth connecting to, I will just find it right away. Versus your experience, which is you didn't find it right away, but what you did do is you found these opportunities to serve that community and to be connected to it. And then by serving it and taking ownership of it, it led to connection. I experienced that with different churches. When I stepped into being a pastor, I recognized that there were all sorts of beautiful relationships that I wouldn't have just naturally gone to because like we might have not had a lot in common, right? There were 80-year-olds and 90-year-olds I would go and visit. And it wasn't like, hey, we watched the same shows, we did all the same things, I had all the same interests, but it was just showing up for them regularly that I was like, they became family to me. And so I hear that a little bit in your story. One of the things that you talked about is that it was at USF that you were able to build some of the best relationships that you've had and to develop a sense of community that you hadn't experienced before. What do you think it is that makes for good community?
Yeah, to start by quoting my pastor, and maybe he's quoting somebody else, I don't know. One of the things that he says routinely is that you can either be impressive or you can be known. And he goes further to say that the people that are impressed by you don't really know you, and the people that know you aren't impressed by you. I think what that boils down to is that what makes a good community is people that really know each other and take the time to take those steps to do that. Because if you're constantly trying to impress one another, it's just a battle of one-upsmanship, I guess, if that's a word. And that's no way to get to know one another. Some of my favorite relationships that I've made as a staff member have been with students that are in crisis or students that are maybe further along in their studies, you know, they're juniors, they're seniors, that haven't really been connected on campus in terms of leadership, or they've just been studying, they haven't been in athletics or in the arts, or, you know, they've just been focused on their studies. And then, you know, 2 or 3 years in, they're like, oh, I think I finally want to do something else as well. I think that's what makes community strong, is when people want to be known and they want to know you. So that's what I think makes one of the strongest components of a good community, is people that want to be known, that want to know others, and that take the steps to do that, which is taking the time to have conversation, whether it's joking around and having silly conversations or being able to hone in on things that are a little bit more serious. Both of those things have a time and a place. I'm thinking of specific student leaders. I had an RA this past year who he was a senior, and this was his first time getting involved as a student leader. And he was more introverted, didn't know a lot of people on campus, but we were in our office really excited when we saw his application come across, because we knew who he was because he had lived on campus all 4 years. And so we were like, awesome, this is somebody who hasn't been involved from our perspective, and we'd love to see him get involved. And so I got to meet regularly with him because he was on my staff and get to know him more. And he actually just texted me today asking me to get him connected at my church. And so I got to connect with him more now after his time at USF and just continue that relationship. And That's just something special, and it shows that continued community engagement that started at USF but continues on after.
A couple of things that you said there. One was moving beyond sharing space to actually sharing our lives. Like sometimes a substitute for community is just proximity, which obviously you need proximity to get to know people. You need to get close enough.
Yeah.
But sometimes we're like, as long as I'm near someone, I must be building community. But that doesn't always translate. Like we know there might be roommates at the university who they share a room, but they don't actually open their lives to each other. And so the community's not built. Or you can attend a Canaries game or like a concert or whatever, and you're sharing space with all sorts of people and you walk away not knowing anyone. And so there is like a level of vulnerability of actually opening ourselves up to others. And some of the things that we had talked about, even serving in a local church, where there's a desire to get to know other people in the church. And sometimes what can happen is people might suggest, we want to get to know that person. You should have them go up on stage and share their testimony. And although like that's wonderful when people are willing to do that, the other thing that happens there is you get to hear their story, but they don't get to know you. Mm. And so sometimes we substitute just that. We're like, now I know stuff about that person. And we don't actually have a relationship though. And so there's a both and of listening and also sharing. And that takes proximity, but it also takes a certain amount of intentionality. And like you talked about, time. You have to keep showing up. And I mean, even thinking back on all the relationships that I've been able to build throughout the years, there might have been some that happened right away, but usually it was just showing up and then you find something, an area of connection or something that clicks and you're like, okay, I now feel a different layer of friendship with this person. Or even if it's not friendship, they become like family to you. And that requires duration of continuing to be in that same place, that consistency, or the Benedictine monks show this vow of stability of like, I'm going to not only show up to a place once or twice, I'm going to commit to being there on a regular basis. And what that does is it creates a sense of reliability. Like I know this person's going to be there and I got to figure out how to build a relationship with them. So when we think about some of those elements of building community, of opening up and being known, what are some things that you think we can do to know others and to be known? Like, are there certain steps that we can take in order to not only run into community, but actually cultivate it?
The first step is to find the best way in which to open yourself up to be known, and to do that appropriately.
Yeah.
You know, there's a time and a place to do that well. Like if somebody, for example, maybe struggles with an addiction or something like that, that's not necessarily how they should greet someone. Sure. Is say, hi, my name is so-and-so, and I struggled with addiction for X amount of years, and that's my story. I don't anymore. You know, right. Because I was saved and I love Jesus and he saved me from that. That's not necessarily the best way to greet somebody, but I think that there's an appropriate way to meet somebody and let them know, hey, I'm somebody that wants you to know who I am, and show that I care about getting to know you as well. And that's something that I struggled with for a while, because I took the opposite approach of like, I want to get to know this person really well, without flipping it and like letting them know me really well.
Yeah, right.
And so I had a different student who we were doing student leader training, and we were having just like an evening event during training. And so we were playing cornhole, and I was just like asking her some questions, trying to get to know her a little bit. And she went back to her residence hall afterwards and told her friend that I was like grilling her and like pestering her, and that she didn't really like me as a staff member because of that. So that was a bad approach. Sure. Because I was just only asking questions about her and not really sharing anything about myself or relating to her much.
Sure.
I was just asking questions and leaving it there. So some things that I do is greet people with a smile, try to be friendly and vulnerable in a way that's appropriate to let them know that I want to get to know them, but that the best way to do that would be to let them know who I am first.
It reminds me of certain church situations where there's a good intentions, a desire to like say like we see you, but it can also be like we're not going to let you leave until you tell us all these things. It's like chill out. You don't have to make it weird. But yeah, sometimes there can be a level where we're maybe not sure how to do it, and so then we like ramp it up versus being natural.
The other thing that I would always encourage my RAs to do when I was a resident director, because I was like, hey, all of us are nerds in our own ways. And when I was a student especially, and still when I'm on road trips, I really become a theater nerd all over again. And so what I would tell my RAs is, hey, everyone's a nerd, so go and introduce yourself to your residents and figure out what they're a nerd about. Most people are going to put it on their walls in their rooms. So if they're putting up posters, or maybe it's like they have something on their desk, if it's like a bobblehead or whatever the case, some sort of decoration that they have in their room, just ask them about it. Even if it's something that you don't really know anything about, or quite frankly, if you don't really care that much about it, this is a way for you to connect with somebody very early on and for them to feel welcomed in a new space. We want this campus to feel like a place that they can call home for their 4 years here. And so this is the time to do it, to set that tone. And so I was like, let them be a nerd.
Yes.
Like, go greet them and then ask them about this thing. And sometimes it'll be a thing that you know a lot about as well. And you can both be nerds for a second.
Right.
And it'll be a lot of fun. And then you make this immediate connection with somebody that lasts for as long as you know them, honestly.
Yes. That's such a helpful thing, because I think one of the barriers to community is those first steps of even starting a conversation. Sometimes people are just like, I don't know what to talk about.
Yeah.
And trying to think of it. And then it's just, there can be the awkward silence. And then the voice that gets in our head and we start telling ourselves is like, we just shouldn't start conversations. Versus, no, like, look for something that people nerd out about, something that people love, and then ask them more about it. And it's okay to reveal, I don't know anything about that. And to ask questions too, to be like, hey, I've heard this, is that right? And let them go on it, and you learn all sorts of things. It also reminds me of even approaches towards loving and caring for our neighbor. I once heard a person talk about how in the neighborhood, oftentimes we're looking for opportunities to do things for our neighbors. And that's great, but do we also look for opportunities for our neighbors to use their skills and to serve us? And people are very willing to step into that. You don't have to generate the conversation. You just get to stimulate it by asking questions.
Yeah.
So now you've had this experience of being in different roles where you help cultivate community by, planning activities and hosting different events. What out of all those events have you seen as really being successful in helping people build relationships?
Yeah, so I'd say to highlight a few, USF Olympics is one of the bigger ones that I've been able to be a part of in terms of planning and hosting. And there's a few factors that go into that, being a part of engaging in building community. And those are at the beginning of the year. And so part of that is like everyone's kind of jazzed about being here and wanting to meet new people and be a part of a community. But also that it's a week full of competition and you're competing with your residence hall. So you're kind of built into a team of people that you're living with. And the competitions are a mix of athletically inclined events and not. So everyone gets to kind of compete if they wish. So if you're somebody like me who didn't want to make a fool of yourself in volleyball, you don't have to. You can go to USF Trivia and do that. Or my freshman year, we did board games, and I was the only person to show up from my hall. And I competed against several people from the other halls and still took home silver, and I was very proud of myself. So USF Olympics was a big one. I started Clothespin Assassin a few years ago as a staff member, and I've seen that kind of grow, and so that's been a lot of fun. People get pretty intense about that now, not quite to the point of wrestling, but borderline, and so that's become really fun. And I think what I've found to be most successful in terms of community building events is long form events. So the last one, and the one that I've had the most success with, is Humans versus Zombies. And so it's a long standing USF tradition, started before me, but I know a couple current students that met and are now dating, but they met playing Humans versus Zombies, which is kind of a fun story for me to tell because I was like planning and hosting it. And so I'm like, aha, I'm bringing people together. But these long form events, it gives people a week to continue to kind of get to know each other. And like the one night events are great. And, you know, they continue to happen. But there's something special about these long form events that with like a Humans versus Zombies, when there's like a mission every night and people continually show up every night to something like that, it's almost like you're playing a sport or like you're rehearsing for a show or something like that, where you're working towards a common goal and you show up every day to do it with the same people. There's something special about that just works to build a community.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm sure there's more opportunities for events like that, but I haven't found them yet, and I'm still looking for more. But there's only so many weeks in the year,
Sure.
And if I do too many of them, students are gonna get burnt out, and they're gonna have to be real selective, and I'm gonna run out of students fast.
Yes. So just hearing that too, just thinking in terms of any type of community has this variety of components, an attitude of, hey, I want to show up and get to know someone. So like if the attitude isn't there, you can like be in an event, but if you're not desiring to get to know people, you're not going to do it. A shared activity or common work, like when you're working alongside one another, whether it's in a game or participating in like thinking through something or coming up with something creative, there's something about that binds you together. And then there's the consistency of it, doing it repeatedly again and again. It forms this sense of team. And then this idea of everybody having a role, that there's a variety of gifts. Not everybody is good at the same thing, but if one person is doing everything, it doesn't necessarily form community. But as everybody participates and has a role and is able to use their gifting, that it really does form a stronger community. And I think you see that in everything that you've talked about. And it's not just games or whatever else. It's like anytime where that can happen, it's going to build relationships. And so just appreciate your willingness to come on and share your insight and help us think more deeply about how we can form community.
Of course.